session of our Book Industry Summit, we have with us Ms. Flor Romana-Cruz to present the state of the Philippine book publishing industry. Ms. Flor Romana-Cruz is the chair of the National Book Development Board. She is a former faculty member of the International School Manila, where she headed the Children's Media Center and taught writing to gifted and talented elementary school students. She continues to be a literacy advocate as a columnist of the Learning Curve for the op-ed section of the Philippine Daily Inquirer. Let's all give a warm welcome to Ms. Flor Romana-Cruz. Ms. Flor Marie will be joined by this session's three actor, Mr. Richard Emerson Ballester of the National Economic Development Authority. Mr. Ballester is the Assistant Director of the Trade, Services, and Industry Staff of the National Economic and Development Authority. Previously, he served as the Chief of the Macroeconomics Division of the National Policy and Planning Staff from the same institution. Let's all give a warm welcome to Mr. Ballester. And last but not the least, we have Ms. Karina Bolasco as this session's moderator. Ms. Karina Bolasco is the director of the Ateneo de Manila University Press, which under her leadership has been cited Publisher of the Year by the Manila Critics Circle. And it was also the Publisher of the Year in 2017 and 2018. Let's all give a warm welcome to Ms. Karina Bolasco.
Okay, good morning everyone. So this is a plenary session today. We will open with the state of the Philippine book publishing industry. Of course, we want to know if we're what, afloat or sinking. So Nenny will give us a barrage, I think, of data and statistics and tell us where we are as a book publishing industry.
Of course, we're optimistic. How can we not be? So good morning, everyone. I'm so happy about this first book industry summit in partnership between the National Book Development Board and the Book Development Association of the Philippines. I find it especially timely because November is Philippine Book Development Month. We emphasize reading. It's the month when teachers, librarians have their workshops to be better communicators, to be better conveyors to their students of reading as a pleasurable and valuable activity. I only wish it was not limited to November, but to other months of the year. So book publishing is a myriad of processes. So in between the author's finished manuscript and the fresh copy of the book that lands in a reader's hands exists an intricate mode of production that requires not just technical skill, but also an exercise of taste and judgment, a deployment of different forms of capital, among other things. Mediating these processes are your publisher, editor, typesetter, layout artist, printer, bookseller, librarian, agent, and many more people in new jobs that emerge every year. But it is so rare for us to get together in one venue to discourse with each other about how book publishing is in the Philippines and what it could be in the future. So this is just to provide context for the conversation that I hope will happen, will be fruitful these 2 days. So book publishing is always in crisis. It's an industry marked with a looming shadow of change. Over the decades, many have called it a sunset industry, portending its doom. Yet there are more readers than ever, more book titles published every year. It's high time that we take a more optimistic view about the future of books and find out which areas we can improve on at present. So before we move on with the rest of the summit, let's give ourselves an overview of the Philippine book publishing industry in numbers. It's a very difficult job to gather statistics for the book industry because many of us in the industry hold our deepest secrets close to our hearts. And while we have gone to many agencies now, what NBDB is trying to do is to extrapolate information, combine information, see what we can do. This, I think, is very basic information. I cannot really vouch 100% for accuracy, not in the way our NBDB research staff gathered it, but in the way it captures the realistic picture of the industry. So today, the Philippine book industry is currently experiencing some steady growth. In 2015, 4,248 active publishers received ISBNs from the National Library of the Philippines. Last year, the total number released was 7,474. You'll see that it's a slight downward trend from over 9,000 in 2015. But you see, what we are not accounting for in these figures are independent publishers. Those of us in the generation that honor and value the international serial book numbers may be a fading organization, fading generation, because many up and coming and young publishers feel that they don't need an ISBN to have their books in the market. That is why this year, in an unprecedented move, the National Book Awards, the Manila Critics Circle decided they would accept entries from publishers whose books do not carry an ISBN. This is the very first time. I guess in the past, we used to count it as a badge of legitimacy. But today, we understand the publishers who cannot cope, cannot manage to produce all the documents that the National Library requires. Because if you're the publisher filing for an ISBN, they want your business permit, they want all sorts of documents that could be intimidating to a beginning publisher. In 2016, there were 79 publishing-related establishments with 3,629 employees comprising the industry. Oh, in 2018, there are supposedly 1,455 National Library affiliated public libraries in the Philippines. But 40 of these are active, 41 are inactive or non-compliant, while the remaining are closed, 18%. In addition, it's interesting to note that the 2017 Readership Survey reported that awareness of Filipinos about the presence of public libraries in the local government units is very low. Only 12% of respondents are aware of public libraries in their barangay, while 40% are aware of some public libraries in their cities. That seems to be a grim outlook for accessibility. But we should take note there are libraries such as the Quezon City Public Library and the Cebu City Public Library that are leading the pack in terms of making the library more accessible to students and other researchers. But that's nothing to be happy about because that's only two. How large is the Philippines? How large are the islands? And they're just in major cities. Okay, so Quezon City has upgraded their facilities, including digital resources. I was there when it was newly opened, and I was very impressed with the resources and the people frequenting it, the many students. But we are so poor often in maintaining our resources. So I think it merits a visit soon. There is, of course, the Cebu Public Library, which caught headlines, which was the subject of an Inquirer editorial. I guess because it's so rare that it was open 24/7. Students love it. Again, this is something I'd like our Cebuano friends to please visit and check out. It is subject to the vagaries of politics. During Mayor Osmeña's time, it was enjoyed by everyone. After the elections, they said, we think it's been closed. So I don't really know the status as of now. Okay. In 2018, the total number of NBDB registrants was 888. This is a big jump compared to 2010 when we had only 510 registrants. We are extremely happy that NBDB services are reaching more stakeholders, especially authors, illustrators, editors. Going to NBDB registered enterprises, there's a reported 7 billion pesos in publishing revenue. Of course, this number does not reflect the full scale of industry outcome. Why do I always apologize after every statistics? I won't anymore. Take it or leave it. I think our staff, Jason and Kay with Annie did a wonderful curation of the schedule. I'm happily surprised that the NBDB research team found such statistics, so I won't apologize. Okay, the industry has contributed to 0.04% to the country's 2016 gross domestic product. This is a slight downward trend from 2015. So we must, as our industry growth fluctuates, we must find new ways to expand. At a recent meeting for the book industry with with the DTI, we're usually working with the Bureau of Investments. We have the two representatives here. One of them sits on our board as a government representative, Director Cory Dichosa. So we were in DTI, and we were asked, how do you rate your industry, or how do you consider something like that? And we didn't know what to say. But when she asked more information, she said, oh, that's why you're with BOI, not DTI, because you're a fledgling industry. How long will we be fledgling? Okay, now, let's look at the local and international trade of books. So to improve our business, we must look at how to improve our content development and our distribution channels locally and abroad. In 2015, the total family expenditure on books was 6 billion pesos. The contribution of books, which is only 0.12%, is quite insignificant when looking at the overall family expenditure. In terms of textbook, the industry is still struggling to meet our target number of procured textbooks. But we are all working extremely hard toward the delivery of high-quality textbooks to equip young learners in this new K-12 education system. That's why we're happy when PEPA is present at our workshops and discussion groups. According to 2016 data, there were at least 2,200 establishments engaged in the wholesale and retail trade of books. This earned the country an income of 28 billion in 2016. Out of this establishment engaged in trade of books, there are at least 670 bookstores in the Philippines. As one would expect, the total number of imports of books in the Philippines far exceeds the exports. In 2018, 3.6 billion worth of books was imported to the Philippines from 80 countries. So during a period of 2010 to 2018, 25 billion worth of books was imported from 80 countries. From our slide, you can see our top suppliers are the United States, Singapore, Great Britain, South Korea, among other Asian countries. Conversely, in 2018, 236.32 million. So compare that to the billions that we import. 236.32 million worth of books was exported from the Philippines. The total for the period 2010 to 2018 was 1.2 billion worth of books from the Philippines to different countries. Where did our books go? The top destinations were, and you can see why, Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, and the United Arab Emirates. Now, I'd like to turn your attention to the other end of the publishing chain, which is readership. In order for the book industry to develop the kind of content that matters, we must be more conscious of the well-being and the interests of the reader. While many of you may have captured different highlights of the survey last year, I'd like to repeat some salient points now. So we had a readership survey in 2018, and we are preparing for the next one as we want it to be a regular survey. So among the respondents were 1,200 adults, 1,200 children, evenly distributed among the 4 main Philippine island groups. The readership survey shows that the readership of books among adults decreased for 2 consecutive periods, from 90% in 2003 to 83% and 80% in 2007 and 2012. However, this level remained constant at 80% over a 5-year period, 2012 to 2017. Contrary to the popular belief that few children read books nowadays due to popularity of new media and other forms of distractions, the survey results show that more children read across all book formats, from printed to electronic and audio books. In terms of book formats, printed books remain more popular than books in other formats. Another curious data from the survey is that it shows how people are engaged in reading and writing in online communities. The most popular fan fiction website or platform for reading and writing is Wattpad. A third of Filipinos use this platform. Going to the language content of their books, respondents answered that almost half of the books read are written in Filipino or English. Readership in other local languages remain very small at around 7%. That's also because we have very few materials as yet, although more and more publishers are now using Philippine languages. If we compare the language of actual books being read versus the language they would prefer to read the books in, the preference for Filipino language books is much higher at 58%. This implies a shortage in the available books written in Filipino. This means that the industry can meet the demands of the Filipino reader by publishing Filipino language books in the following genres: encyclopedia, almanac, dictionary, thesaurus, atlas, and maps, health and wellness, food, cookbooks, and beverages. There are other insights to be gleaned from the study, but the message is clear. The typical Filipino still wants to read. She wants to read more content in Filipino or local languages, and it's up to us to close that gap. What are the NBDB initiatives moving forward? NBDB is determined to sustain and improve its capacity building activities, public campaigns, which include our literary festivals and summits, Buklatan sa Bayan in rural areas, our award-winning ceremonies, and the regular kapihan sessions with the different sectors of the industry. We will continue to invest more in industry research and investment promotion to provide more data and venues through which the industry can spread its wings. So what does the NBDB, what has it achieved so far? in terms of translations. From 2014 to 2018, we had a measly total of 39 titles, translated from foreign languages to local languages. Conversely, from 2010 to 2014, only 20 local titles were translated into foreign languages. In the next 5 years, we are ambitious and we aim to produce 10 times as many Filipino to foreign language translations as part of our strategy to go global. It's a tall order, but one that's badly needed. We also intend to increase the number of programs aimed at developing the industry. In particular, capacity building session for publishers, authors, illustrators, all other professionals who would like to learn more about rights selling, content development. We also plan to make the Philippine book industry more visible on the global market by sending more industry professionals to international trade fairs. Since 2015, by the skin of our teeth, the NBDB and its registered publishers have made a regular, consistent appearance at the Frankfurt Book Fair, the world's largest and most important trade fair for books. It draws about 7,000 exhibitors, 200,000 visitors every year, and is the most important marketplace for book rights and a venue of cultural exchange among many different countries. In addition to the Frankfurt Book Fair, we hope to bring our stakeholders to the following international trade fairs to reach different markets. And happily, Congress has been very supportive of our initiatives. There's the London Book Fair to capture the Anglophone market for literature. Last year, Indonesia, who was guest of honor in Frankfurt, was guest of honor in London. And they told us, why aren't you going? They'll look for you. You publish more English titles than we do. There's the Bologna Children's Book Fair, a trade fair focusing on children's and young adult literature. There's the Guadalajara International Book Fair to reach the Spanish-speaking market, and the Abu Dhabi International Book Fair, where we can also reach a growing population of Filipino expats. As part of the initiative to develop more content, we aim to produce more manuscripts through the National Book Development Trust Fund. This is a grant aimed at producing more science and other educational titles within the industry, usually topics that authors do not usually write on because maybe publishers are not so eager to use them. Besides improving library system and other channels of distribution, the industry is also working toward making books accessible in other formats so that individuals with visual impairments can have access to a wider, vaster trove of literature and other reading materials. In December, the Philippines acceded to the Marrakesh Treaty. This is an international treaty aimed to ease access to print works in formats adapted for persons who are blind, visually impaired, or otherwise print disabled. It does this by requiring countries or territories who adopt the treaty to give exceptions in its traditional copyright law. Entities such as DepEd, Bureau of Learning Resources, Bureau of Learning Delivery, Bookshare Philippines, and St. Matthew's Publishing, the first publishing company in the country who adopted Bookshare, who partnered with Bookshare. These are those who are pushing to make more content available to differently abled readers. We hope that in the future, as Bookshare shares its information, explains its mission further, more publishers can follow their lead. I had a conversation with Attorney Buhain earlier, asking him for low books to be on Bookshare. And of course, he asked the basic question, what will publishers get in return? I told him, you pay nothing to be on Bookshare and you get nothing. But think of it as an outreach. There are many other perks. What I have painted for you just now is an incomplete picture of the book industry. I hope it supplements what Andrea Pasion Flores did in the very first book that studied the book industry. How long ago was it? 5 years ago? Okay, 5 years ago. But I hope we can use this information as a jump-off point for the many conversations we will have today and tomorrow. There are indeed many areas in which we have yet to improve. We have a vast wealth of content, yet we can lack the creative infrastructure to make this content available and accessible to wider reading population if we're going to make the Philippine book industry more globally competitive. It's imperative that we all work together toward finding solutions to our greatest challenges. And we at the NBDB are only too glad to be your partner in this journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Nenny. A lot of bad news, but well delivered, not so. Yeah, anyway, we're privileged today because we have many people from the other government agencies to dialogue with. At a publishing conference in Paju Book City in Korea, you know, they have a book city, a place where all the publishers are. And at that conference, they started by sharing with us the national economic policy of South Korea. And it explicitly said that the impetus for economy is culture. And I think, if I remember correctly, from the time they said that at the turn of the 21st century, Korea has really been doing so well. I mean, with their telenovelas, their films, their Gangnam, their K-pop, their food, their kimchi, everything, no? So now we will know where the book publishing industry is in the scheme of the national economic policy of the country. We will have as reactor Director Richard Emerson Ballester, who is a representative of the National Economic Development Authority.
Okay, good morning. NEDA is thankful that the agency is invited in this particular prestigious event. Gano'n ba ka-importante ang books? I myself, a lover of books. 1/3 ng kwarto ko, libro eh. In my job as an economist, in the dispensation of my duties, I have to always read. And most of the readings come from books. Unfortunately, this is the unfortunate side. Only, I think, 10% comes from Filipino authors, Filipino books, mostly foreign. We do also have a vast library in NEDA, you know, we have books. of course, we have several Filipino authors. Most of these are around 20 to 30% comes from from domestically, and of course, 70% of it comes from foreign publishers. And we're happy that despite the issues and challenges that the book industry is encountering, we still see somehow, ma'am, a good progress of the industry. But allow me to deliver to you some of the insights that we have taken based on the presentation of Ma'am Santa Romana. I'm very happy kasi taga Albay rin pala si ma'am. And I'm also from the province of Albay, Bicolano. Mga mahilig rin magbasa po ng mga libro. Okay. So allow me to start first. I can divide this into 5 categories. Our insights in this particular presentation. If you look into the data in the 2017 ASPBI, we have around 10% of the total establishments out of the 812. 10% lang tayo, no? When I look into the data of the International Publishers Association as of 2017, in the ASEAN 5, we are the 5th. In terms of volume of production and then revenue. So it confirms only what Ma'am has told us about the state of the book industry. I think more has to be done in order to improve, not only in terms of production, but also perhaps more on the appreciation and quality, communication advocacy perhaps in the side of the book industry. Now, when we look into the data, in terms of the gross value added, we've been seeing that the publishing and printing from 2000 to 2003 to 2008 to 2011 period has been on a downward trend. Although the growth spiked during the 2012 to 2015 period by 110.6%. It's the subsector share to GDP has been on a relatively upward trend. Highest share to GDP at 0.84% was recorded in 2015. The subsector obtained its highest share to GDP in the period 2015 to 2017 within the 10-year period. Now, in terms of its share to manufacturing GVA, the gross value added, it has been also on a relatively upward trend at 1.02%. That's the highest recorded share to the gross value added of manufacturing. That's in 2015 within the 10-year period. Now, looking into the industry trends, when we look into the e-commerce, so our insight is that given the increasing importance of e-commerce, the book publishing industry will benefit from a stronger and more vigorous push towards online and e-commerce platform engagements to reach a broader and younger set of readers. From a policy perspective, the book publishing industry, along with IT/BPM, tourism, transportation, and logistics, and other major sectors will benefit from liberalizing the country's telecommunication sector. And this is the reason why in Congress, we would like also to, we have 3 priority bills in order to liberalize the services, particularly the services sector. One is in the amendments on the Foreign Investment Act, second, and the amendments to the Retail Trade Law, and the third one is in the definition of the Public Service Act. So, by opening our economy more to foreign investors, we're seeing complementarity rather than competition. Okay. Now, when it comes to the number of ISBNs, Our insight is that less and less local writers are publishing books in response to perceived unprofitability of publishing books. Further, local book industry faces steep competition vis-a-vis imported books. In pursuit of innovation, an increasing percentage of these new books being released annually are in e-book format, which bodes well for this particular segment, catering to the demands of the younger set of readers who prefer to consume books in electronic format, either via mobile app or through e-book devices. The trend can allow the industry to gain market access and penetrate wider markets. This includes being able to serve those who are geographically disadvantaged to lack of access to traditional stores and bookshops. Now, when it comes to libraries, in terms of the proportion of public libraries to the country's population, one public library caters to around 172,026 Filipinos. And the challenge is to make public libraries more interesting. Yun ang challenge doon. I think we need to beef up the new books available in these public libraries, because I studied in Japan, for example, and may mga 24-hour libraries, libraries. And what I saw is that people are interested in reading kahit anong oras, kahit this oras ng gabi, as long as the information that can be found in that public library ay updated. So that's a challenge also in the part of the government to ensure that public libraries are upgraded. Of course, aanin mo naman yung, kung history major ka siguro, archaeology, kasi may mga nakita pa akong libro nung nagpunta ako ng Iloilo Public Library. Just to be fair naman sa LGU ng Iloilo, hindi naman siguro niya kasalanan rin nila. May nakita akong libro doon, 1908 pa. Diba? So, it's a collector's item, but is that the demand of the readers? If you notice, masyadong mataas ang reading demand, lalo na ng young population. They will be looking for more new set of information, interesting ones, especially the emerging areas. Yan ang kanilang mga binabasa ngayon. Now, another insight is that the industry needs to drastically innovate to overcome its structural limitations. So we try to simulate using the economic impact of a 10% increase in the industry's GVA using the input-output model. So in general, what we see is that positive increases in the output of any productive sector of the industry will result in corresponding increment in total output. So in the run that we did, a 10% increment in the output of the subsector will increase a 0.023% increase in GDP. So a 10% increment in the output will result to 0.023% increase in GDP. So when I look also into the, what do you call this, the total linkage of the industry, for every 1 peso that you invest, the returns to the industry is at 2.33 pesos. So that's the investment returns. It's high. If you look into the other industries, yung iba, lalo sa agriculture, it's almost hindi gumagalaw. A 1 peso will just give you 1 peso uli, halos. But in the book industry, the additional returns will be 2.33 pesos. So it's a profitable industry actually, but it has to, of course, take into consideration, of course, the new modalities of platforms that has to be adopted especially in the light of the fourth industrial revolution. Now, in terms of the book trade, our insight is that with the growing importance of e-commerce and digitization of books, It is critical for the country to be able to accurately capture trade data on digital books as well as those transactions that are done online for proper accounting and even for taxation purposes. The DTI, if I think the book industry is heavily involved also in the crafting of the e-commerce roadmap. It will be launched next year. And I think the book industry is a critical player in this e-commerce roadmap. Now, in terms of raw materials, our insight is that the Philippines has difficulty producing virgin pulp given the lack of forest resources that we have in our country. Second, the country's high energy costs, inadequate infrastructure pose challenges for the paper industry, as the sector is one of the largest industrial consumers of electricity. However, depending on the pace of the country in terms of adapting technology-based platforms to replace paper as the primary communication medium, this will potentially affect our raw material importation, particularly for the requirements of the book publishing industry. This shift will require the industry to assess potential labor and capital displacements, as well as increasing the demand for workers with medium to high level skills. So of course, there's a need for reskilling and retooling. Now for printing machines, importation. Our insight is that similar to the comment that we had in the adoption of the technology-based machineries, given the rapidly evolving nature of technology, firms must be able to recalibrate industry plans with the view of adopting new and low-cost energy or low-cost technologies to be able to reduce their overhead costs and remain competitive. Now, moving forward, our insight is that in terms of main challenges, there are at least two most pressing concerns. First is the growth of the digitalization of the books with corresponding concerns of piracy, or rather, growing digitalization of books with corresponding piracy concerns. Second is the potential labor displacements caused by rapid advancements in technology and innovation. Embracing innovation is a key thrust that will enable the industry to thrive and remain relevant, given the set of challenges identified so far. Further, the NBDB must effectively coordinate with various NGAs, including DepEd, CHED, TESTA, DUST, DTI, and other relevant agencies. This is what we're doing right now with the STI ecosystem, the Science, Technology, and Innovation. We have so many products and services being offered in the area of STI. But what we notice is that there is a silo mentality among agencies. And each agency are doing their outputs within their own track. And I think this is now high time, of course, not only for the NBDB, but for the rest of the other agencies that I have mentioned, that perhaps an interagency committee, headed of course by NBDB, be strengthened in order to have a stronger position in answering policy, programs, and projects in the area of the book industry. And aside from that, how to strategically place the book industry in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution. So, napaka-importante po noon. So, for the STI, nakita nyo, tumalon di ba yung global innovation ranking? So, that's what we are doing right now, is steering the STI. Perhaps the book industry can have that particular mechanism in order to strengthen, kanina nga sinabi ni ma'am, pledging, yung term na ginamit ni ma'am. But that pledging, I do not see it as a problem, but rather as a challenge in order to grow more. Because that has been a concern also of our other ASEAN countries, like in the case of Thailand and Indonesia. But when I look in the recent data of the of the International Publishers Association, naunahan na nila tayo in terms of volume of production. So what's in there na wala sa atin? Considering that we have the vantage in terms of, one, the skill. Second, in terms of the command of language, especially the international language. Di ba? So, the last one, while current data suggests that Filipino families' book expenditure is minimal, which is third among the recreation and culture expenditure, and 73rd out of all the non-food expenditure, increased welfare Filipino families will result in higher consumption of books and other goods falling under non-essential as primary needs are met. Achieving the country's medium-term goal, which is to become a middle-income country by 2022, will be the appropriate environment that will support the industry's growth and development. I think ang isang napansin ko, this is just an observation, there is no empirical data on this, but in some of the major universities, halimbawa sa case ng UP, nung pinalawig nila yung pagbubukas ng library, ang akala kasi nila noon, there will be no demand extending the library hours. But in fact, after extending the library hours, nakita nila that the number of students going into the library dumarami. So, anong ang implication nun? If that is the case, that is a microcosm of possibly of the Philippine society. Possibly if we make the public spaces, no, conducive for books, especially new books, no, I think it will answer, it will cater the demands of the young generation. That's what I noticed in the case of UP. In other state universities, ginagawa rin nila yun ngayon. And I saw the increasing trend of usage of students. So I think there should be a more collaborative effort on the part of government agencies in order to beef up and to lift the situation of the book industry. But definitely, as I close this, the insights that I have given, I'm very thankful to the book industry for helping Filipinos to access useful information. Alam naman natin sa internet, 60 to 70% yan, garbage yan. And usually, ang books, yan na yung mga na-vet eh. It underwent thorough vetting before it could be given to the readers. And that's why books, of course, relative to journals, most of these are those information, knowledge that has already, or technology that has already tested over time. And because of this, books are primary transmission mechanism of the ideals of society. So napakahalaga po 'yon, ano? And so I commend the book industry for taking a very good job in enriching the Filipino society. Thank you very much.
I know the schedule is very tight, but I think we can have 5 minutes of Q&A because we don't want to waste the opportunity to ask questions. We have very good resource persons here this morning to open the summit. Anybody who wants to raise the first question? Yes. Do we have a microphone for? Can you introduce your?
Hello po, good morning. I'm Ria Natividad from UP Press. Sir Ballesteros, you mentioned earlier that liberalizing the telecommunications sector will benefit the book industry. Can you expound more on this?
By having the third telco, will be able to speed up our bandwidth. Kasi 'di ba sa isang survey, we've been told that Filipinos are among those people who keep on staying longer hours sa internet. Pero hindi ako naniniwala na kaya sila matagal is because nagbabasa sila. Matagal yung pag-a-access. Yun ang reason noon. We have to look into the data beyond what is given to us. And that is true. If you are reading, for example, PDF, di ba, na libro, ay yung mga Kindle, EPUB, di ba? Of course, kung nabili mo na siya, is madali yung accessibility. But if it's a voluminous book, it will take time for you to access it. And having the third telco, my experience when I was in United States and in Japan, napakabilis. Yung 1 gigabyte na libro, click. You can easily access the information. Hindi yung you will wait 10 to 15 minutes just to get the... Kasi pag nagbabasa ka naman, from a policy perspective, you do not read everything. You will just choose kung ano yung sa tingin mo useful on your part. At kahit naman kayo sa book industry, aminin natin, hindi nyo naman babasahin lahat, di ba? You will choose what is more relevant to your profession, to your discipline. And if those involved, kung maraming pixels rin, di ba? How do you make books more interesting? Make it more colorful, di ba? Yung mga libro ngayon, yung mga nilalabas ng Pearson, ng Wiley, what do you notice of these books? Maraming pixels, maraming graphs, usually colorful siya. And if you have the third telco, it's easier for the readers to access the books that they're looking for. I think that's the main goal of having the third telco. And aside from that, ang book kasi ngayon, usually sa mga universities, di ba, may kaalinsabay siya na videos. Especially if these are textbooks, if you want to beef up and to strengthen the learning of the students, you have to have some videos accompanying the textbooks. And how do you speed up the accessing of these videos? Ang videos pa noon medyo matagal. Di ba? Even yung complementary quizzes niya. Okay? In Japan, for example, pag nanonood ka ng YouTube, that was 2007 when I was there, 2 years that I've stayed. Okay lang manood ng pelikula doon, ng mga educational modules. Bakit? It's so fast. Dito, ano experience natin? Pag clinic mo yung YouTube, accompanying, or even yung videos accompanying the books itself. It's very difficult. It takes time to load. So, nakakawala siya ng interest sa estudyante. Kung ako estudyante or millennial, nakakawala ng interest yun because ang millennial usually time ang hinahabol rin nila.
But how do we make sure that a third telco will do this, will improve our...
Definitely, ma'am. It's part of their TOR because by having the third telco, you'll be adding more although the backbone
The
itself.
terms of reference are different.
Yes, ma'am, definitely because it will increase, of course, your choice after breaking the duopoly of Smart and Globe. What you'll be having is an alternative, actually, in terms of services. Yun lang naman ang reason kung bakit we have a very weak telecommunication system. And another thing is, of course, right now we are aiming for the passage of the Public Service Act, the one that I mentioned a while ago, wherein telecommunications is one of the sectors that we want to liberalize. If we can do that, we can actually fast-track the development telecommunications sector. If you remember, the telecommunications sector is the ITBPM rather is a beneficiary of our reforms in the telecommunications sector way back in the early 2000s. So I think if we are able to liberalize our services sector via the redefinition of the Public Service Act, I think we'll be increasing this accessibility to our readers of books. So I think that's one of the main benefits of having the third telco. Thank you.
Attorney Buhain, you have a question.
Hello. I just would like to repeat the question I posed to the BOI during the Frankfurt Book Fair about the rationale behind of the inclusion of publishing and printing, and I think it was answered.
Can you speak louder, Attorney Buhain?
I think it's about the combination of publishing and printing in the ascertainment of the total revenue. So I just would like to post.
What do you mean by combination? They're clustered
No,
together
they merge
as
with one another, and I'm posing this question: why they are not being separated, considering that the stakeholders in the printing industry is very distinct and very different from the publishing industry.
Why not separated? Will you be able to answer that?
Okay. If you look into the data of, I think it's PSA is the best position to answer this, but definitely, the Philippine, they call this the PSIC, that's the code of our industries. No? If we have that line that we usually see, publishing and books, definitely it has a breakdown, lower levels of disaggregation. And you have to request that special tabulation in the PSA if we want to have that special runs. Why it is being lumped in printing? Because mainly most of the books are in hard copies. That's the reason for that. And I think my colleague, she's also a technical staff from our staff. We do also the simulations and tabulation. Okay, I think we are gonna ask Miss Esther Kinuta for that. Miss Kinuta, please answer the additional ma'am.
Hello po, magandang umaga. Si Esther po ako ng NEDA. Bali sir, when we go through the data, actually magkahiwalay po siya. Sa manufacturing, yung printing and other recorded materials, yung printing na part ay nasa under subsector po ng manufacturing. So sa ating, nandun po siya under industry along with other manufacturing subsectors. Yung publishing sir, it's in services. May separate po siya na category under services. So, in my mind po, magkahiwalay po talaga siya kung titingnan mo yung datos na kinokolekta ng PSA. For this particular purpose, yung presentation, I think, hindi po ako kasi yung gumawa nung presentation material, but I think the NBDB staff would be able to answer kung paanong tinabulate ng PSA to present it in, baka ang nangyari sir, yung halimbawa, mga GVA ng printing na particularly sa book lang kinuha. Yung GVA ng publishing under services kinuha and then nilump together. Pero pwede po talaga siyang ma-disaggregate kasi magkaiba po talaga siya. Yan lang po.
That's why when you are looking into the book industry, you can look from it from the dimension of the industry sector, manufacturing-wise, and then the services, which is the publishing and printing. So, ang tinutukoy siguro ni sir kasi doon sa ASPBI, nakalamp kasi yon, printing, publishing of books. Sa ASPBI, that is a survey-based. Now, when it comes to the national accounts, which is, ang basis rin is actually partly ASPBI, you can actually disaggregate that into two. One is the service component and one is the manufacturing subcomponent. Yun po yung sinasabi ni Ms. Esther.
Any other questions? Yes. Is that Hanilin? Okay.
Hi, good morning, Ma'am Nani. I have a question for you. Earlier you mentioned that there were less ISBNs that came out of the National Library, but you acknowledged that there were a lot of indie book publishers that we are not able to capture. I wanted to find out if there are any plans to try to capture this data. It's understandable. It's similar to the US where the ABA can only report on the print sales but does not capture
the ebook sales for Amazon and all of the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of indie published titles. However, there is Data Guy that actually captures or tries to capture the data of ebook sales that's not reported to the ABA. So I was wondering if we have like a similar initiative so that we can have a more holistic view of how many people, because the conclusion of SIR is that less authors are publishing. But if you go out, like I think several of the exhibitors today are actually publishers that don't procure ISBNs and are very popular with the public. So what are the plans and strategies to capture that data?
So this year was the first time we formally acknowledged the publishers who do not get ISBNs. So I guess this is the beginning of our data gathering for such entities, and we will see how we can keep track of them. I think if they enter the National Book Awards, they would be registered. So maybe we should collect statistics of these independent publishers who do not go through the National Library. Okay, thank you.
I think during Sheila's time, when we said that we produced 9,000 titles, she was saying that maybe about 2005 we did not have ISBN. So even if the output in print is going down per ISBN, maybe that other data is going up. There are more publishers without not using ISBNs because of not being able to access it. No?
I think one way of engaging siguro ma'am sa case, pareho tayo ma'am nasa government, is we engage pa yung PSA that to refine the questionnaire perhaps in the ASPBI or in the census of industries para ma-capture yung that data that do not use the ISBN. Definitely, the production of books, kasi syempre mas tedious ma'am ang ISBN. So mainly doon na sila pumapasok, and we can actually capture that, and perhaps in the International Publishers Association, we can have further improvement on that. Kasi dito sa International Publishers Association, I'm not just sure kung ISBN lang yung kinapture nila or even without the ISBN doon sa data nila. Given that data problem, data capture, I think we have to facilitate that, ma'am, because that is important in improving further the book industry. Now, let me, ma'am, doon sa case ng, that the book industry under the train law, is actually, the majority leader, Senator Soto, and even Undersecretary Chua has already expressed as early as 2018 that under train law, hindi exempted po ang book industry, and it should serve as a boost actually to the industry, because we are signatories to part of the signatory Pilipinas sa Florence Treaty, and we are upholding that. We are exempted in VAT in terms of importation and purchase. Sinabi na yan ng leadership ng DOF and ng Senate. And in the recent discussions that we had, it was reaffirmed actually by the leadership of DOF, by the economic managers, and even by the Senate. That's why Senator Soto, if earlier, di ba, expressed already his support to the industry. So I think, given that policy environment that will help the industry grow more, I think we should take of that particular opportunity, because I don't know if there are other concerns on this na medyo the so-called barriers to entry to the industry. But I think there should be a revisiting, of course, of these barriers, if there are any, in order to make the industry grow more.
Any more questions? Ruth, Andrea? Any more?
So, magandang umaga. Ako po si Joy ng Save the Children. So, maraming salamat sa snapshot ng industry natin, no? I just noticed in the presentation that the data on children is lumped. So, for a wide range ng age. So, I'm just wondering, is there any plans of disaggregating the data in terms of supply and even for the readership survey to include the very young children? Kasi we all know that there's a growing market then for very young children. And then another question is perhaps on is there any way that the mandate of NBDB, because it is an attached agency of DepEd, which is also catering to the basic education. So nawawala yung 0 to 4 years ng ating market, kumbaga. So yun po, 2 questions on early childhood.
Okay. Your input will help us as we refine in preparation for the next readership survey. When we got the results of the survey, this is only the second one the first one that NBDB did on its own independently. So when we got the results, many of us still had questions like those that couldn't we have a breakdown. But I hope you're aware there's another attached agency of the Department of Education headed by Teresita Insiong that does the early childhood development. Do you work with her? Okay. Okay, thank you.
I think to add to that, Neni, I think Dennis Mapa did say that they got the ages, but they have to break it down and extract the information. So I think eventually we can get an age breakdown for children.
Yeah, the study is being prepared for general public release.
Okay. Yes, maybe that could be the last question. Because
Hi,
Just
good
to-
morning. I am Stella Fong of Miriam College. Our problem with the book, no, being produced, for example, is that there is a lack of initiative on the part of the teachers, for example, to engage in book writing, primarily because of lack of support, for example, primarily because of the time that will be given, no, to write books. Now, is there a program, for example, because most of the time their lack of incentive is the primary reason why they don't engage in book writing. So is there a program, for example, by NBDB or any other government agencies that we can have, for example, in SHED or in DepEd, no, to encourage teachers like us, not to write books?
Perhaps I didn't emphasize it enough, but the NBDB has a trust fund so that we open up this trust fund to those who could submit proposals to enable them to write on topics and to free them from their jobs. And there's a modest grant given to them.
Ma'am, is this available to, for example, all the people, individuals, not necessarily belonging to institutions?
No, it's open to individuals. The past 2 years, we've focused on specific topics only to help develop materials for the new curriculum. But in the past, we would have topics like local history or science, what else? Technology and innovation.
But we did have textbooks for the K to 12. That was we opened also for textbooks.
And we can access this online?
Online.
In your website?
NBDB
Okay.
website, the authors.
But I believe that the call for new applicants or new grant applications is still being prepared. We're a little delayed there, but we have the money to help our writers. Did you want your teachers to write teaching materials or
Basically,
independent?
yes, but also primarily, for example, research-based materials, no?
Yes.
So, because we are in the higher institution, so we would want to be able to have access or, even share and impart to the public our researches, for example. But since, as I said, there is lack of incentive on the part of institutions, and because institutions have very limited funds. That's why we needed the greater funding. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
good to hear. But let me just share with you, before we were emphasizing the textbooks for DepEd, we're very proud of, there are only two books that come to my mind in the early years of the trust fund. There was somebody from UP who wrote on traditional medicine in the Philippines based on plants, and it won as best book, no? Another one that also won was very interesting, bird watching in 3 campuses. Miriam, one of them, UP, and Ateneo.
Yes, we're
Yeah.
very strong in environment. Ma'am, because I'm a book author for practical research one, no? And this is being offered in grade 11. Now, we would want, like, for example, because this is a local publication, now, how do we book share, this, or are we even allowed, no, to even book share? Because it is being sold locally.
No, Bookshare accepts all material that you want the visually impaired to have
Yes,
access
yes.
to.
But
They welcome that.
would the local publication,
Yeah.
not run after us, for example, in
What do
book
you mean?
sharing?
What local publication? Your publisher?
Yes,
Your
our publisher.
publishers to give you the right.
Yeah, you have to get permission.
You have to get
Yeah.
permission.
To agree.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yeah, because that is intellectual
Yes.
property rights,
Yes,
right? Oh,
but
okay.
but Bookshare has very tight security on
Mhm.
this material. There are at least 10 steps, and I trust the 10 steps. No, that's why I gave one of my books there.
Okay, sige. Thank you very much.
Okay, our next number is already here. Yeah, Richard, you want to say something?
Just a final comment, ma'am, doon sa last two that was raised. That's why I am emphasizing, in order to strengthen the mechanism from the policy perspective and even in the programs and projects, it will be better if there will be this will be approached in an interagency manner. Of course, the NBDB can do most of the functions, but it will be helpful if meron siyang katulong tulad ng mga other ahensya itong nabanggit ko kanina. Those agencies, especially in the Social Development Committee of NEDA, they are all present. We can strengthen, ma'am, the mechanisms in order to make the book industry more alive and kicking. Kasi if it's tackled from the interagency perspective, we are given the different dimensions of the book industry. It's not only on one end. Second, the kind of readers that we have, siguro hindi ko lang alam kung na-capture yan sa 2017 readership. I'm not a sociologist, but I'm fond of reading sociology books, but as a cousin of economics, as a social science, ano tayo, graphic society tayo. Nagbabasa tayo because may nakikita tayong pictures. We are unlike the developed countries na puro numbers, okay na yan sa kanila, abstractions. Those kind of reading materials are the ones that are being looked into by our young people. And I think if we can make some more enhancement on that area, say mathematics more enhanced with this, I think it will be appreciated more by our readers. And I think the book industry, ma'am, is given the data that we have, it's improving. But of course, there are many other areas for rooms for improvement.
The DTI sits on our board. Maybe we can invite NEDA to also.
Yes, ma'am,
sit on the
definitely.
board.
Because under the Social Development Committee, I think the DepEd being your parent agency who's sitting in there, you can actually ask them that whatever policy shift that you would like to pursue should be fed into the Social Development Committee, because that committee actually fuels most of the policy strategies that we have. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. A round of applause again for Nenny and Richard. Thank you.